have these thoughts, and then he's too afraid to tell her that he likes her. He literally raises a city to the ground, basically, and has all these conversations, and, like, he didn't give a shit about Jan Van Eyck either way until she was like, he almost broke my leg, or shattered my leg. And then he was like, I'll dismantle him. And I'm like, so you'll do that, and you're having all of these little thoughts in your head, and you won't tell the girl you like her.
Men will literally buy a warship for a girl before they tell her how they feel about her. Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm an aspiring criminal.
And this week, we revisit our favorite gang of teenage edgelords as we discuss Crooked Kingdom. Before we gamble our fortunes on sugar futures and the success of a ragtag group of Molgoths, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for our monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter at MortifiedPod. Leyla, you have recently, listen, the new Shadow and Bone series is on Netflix. You introduced me to this franchise 11 months ago. It's kind of the perfect time to talk about Crooked Kingdom, and my understanding is you're very excited.
I am jazzed. I don't know if we're gonna make an episode about Shadow and Bone, the Netflix series, but it's like one of my new favorite things of all time. It fucks irrevocably, and it has kind of rekindled my love for these books, which is very exciting.
Yes. So if you have been with us for a long time, you'll know that actually like our 10th episode was reading Six of Crows, which was the, I want to say 2014 book in this duology.
Is it that old?
Oh yeah. Crooked Kingdom came out in 2016. So wow. Six of Crows, maybe it was 2015. But yeah, no, these books have been out a while, so, we're going to spoil them. But when we did do our Six of Crows episode, I was re-listening to it to prepare for this, and I realized that I personally came at it like kind of hard, and made some very ungenerous and, not very good criticisms of the book. I definitely didn't come across how much I actually liked it, and I do feel quite bad about that. I talked this over with Leyla, and I was like, Leyla, I said some shit about Six of Crows, and I'm very sorry for that. Listen, there are some criticisms. I think there is a little bit of exoticization in that book, and I do think that you can have a read where some of the kids play into stereotypes, but I think that's a very ungenerous take, and I am very sorry for that, and we're going to try to fix it by talking about how much we like Crooked Kingdom. But I just wanted to, get that out there. Sorry, Miss Bardugo, we do like your books very much, and listen. It was the week before my wedding. It was days before my wedding when we recorded that, which had been like largely canceled due to COVID. So I was not in a particularly generous mood at that time. So it wasn't a good take, and I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I was re-listening to the episode for when we compiled our best of a couple of weeks ago, and I would also like to apologize. I was also very stressed. I was fresh off of my asthma diagnosis, and some other stuff was happening, and I also said some very ungenerous things that did not at all constitute how much I love these stupid books. And I say stupid with all the fondness in my heart. They're great. They're great books, but the children are dumb, and I think we can all agree that they don't all make great decisions, and that's what makes it a good book. It's a fun story. It's fun to follow along with. And Miss Bardugo, fantastic fucking job. And I'm so sorry. We were crotchety and a little unkind, but we're about to fix it. We're about to convert some people into the good gospel of Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Can't speak to the Grishaverse books because I haven't read them yet, but Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Here we go. Aaron, what is this book about?
So, Six of Crows ends with the titular Six of Crows is a gang of, as we described, teenage edgelords that are also like incredible master criminals. And they had just completed this heist. They kidnapped this guy who knows the secret of this drug out of this very heavily defended ice court. And the guy who hired them, John Von Eck, betrays them and kidnaps Inej, the Wraith, who is like their rogue, the Suli girl, who is great. And, he's using her as leverage to get Kaz and the rest of the gang to turn over this guy that he kidnapped because, he betrayed them. And basically it follows how they get out of that and try to not only get the money that they were promised, but also solve an international crisis, prevent a war, and get back at the people who have wronged them. And it's pretty darn good, I will say.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on these teens' backs to avoid some national and international conflicts, which is a lot to deal with, admittedly. It's a lot to deal with.
It really is. Shall we do a quick recap of characters?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I feel like the notes I made are about all I have to say about them.
Yeah, so we have our gang leader, Kaz Brecker. We described him in between, let's see, does it go Sasuke, Kaz? No, Sasuke's the final one.
Sasuke's
it goes,
like the like Giga evolution.
The Digi, yeah.
Yeah.
The Digivolve version. No, it goes Robin, Kaz, and then Sasuke in the edgy evolution zone.
You're missing Artemis Fowl.
Oh, okay. Artemis Fowl is the baby Pokemon, if you're ever using the Pokemon scale. Artemis Fowl hatches into a Robin who evolves into a Kazbrecker who, if you use a Brother Stone on him, it turns into Sasuke.
Yes.
He's very interesting, though, and I think this book does a lot to show that he's not just as edgy as he's trying to be. We've got Inej. We just mentioned the Suli girl who is like the best assassin / like cat burglar ever. She gets some interesting moments that I'm sure we'll talk about. Jesper, who is the sharpshooter. Leyla has described him as gay bad decisions.
This is true in the books, and this is true in the TV show. He is gay bad decisions.
He gets a lot of development in this book. Wylan, who is Jan Van Eyck's son, who is apparently a gay angel.
Yes, he's a gay little angel of music, and I love him.
He's a sweet baby. I love him too. Nina, are I think probably still my favorite. Who had just gone through a big drug withdrawal. And that's an interesting line in this book. But she's a Grisha, which means she has magic powers. She was a Heartrender specifically, which means she controls like people's bodies and stuff. Matthias, who is from the basically like the German / Nord zone, and he's like a big idiot who is lovable. According to Nina, we'll talk about our feelings on Matthias. I actually came around on him during my read, which will probably not my co-host probably is not going to like that, but
no, I respect your feelings about Matthias. I just also have feelings about Matthias, and they're all negative.
I don't think that's necessarily unfair. Matthias, in the first book, I think that we were still pretty spot on because he sucked in the first book so bad, just being like basically a white supremacist, which is really funny. But there might be something we can talk about there. And then we just have some other characters. We have Kuwei, who is the Shu, which is basically like China. He's like this. He's the son of the person who invented this super drug, Judaparam. We have John Von Eck, who's the bad guy, Wyland's dad. And then we have Pekka Rollins, who is the reason that Kaz's older brother is dead, and the whole reason that Kaz is like on this, quest for to be Ketterdam's next top edgelord.
He's Pekka Rollins is Kaz Brecker's villain origin story.
Exactly. So Leyla, did anything in particular stand out to you, like when you were just revisiting it?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, Miss Bardugo, sometimes you say things and they break my heart. There are a couple of lines that really got me, especially when Wylan was... there's a chapter where Wylan kind of gives his backstory of, like, how he came to be the quote-unquote runaway prince. And, I mean, fuck it, we said we were going to spoil this book. I don't know why I'm, like, trying to obfuscate. But basically, Jan Van Eyck, Wylan's dad, because Wylan can't read, he has a learning disability, and he can't read, he said he was sending him away to music school, and instead tried to have him killed on the way to music school. And the entire time, Wylan, as he's, like, kind of having this flashback and going back through this story, he was basically saying his father was justified, right? He was like, well, I'm the useless son. Like, he was just doing what he had to do. And, you know, he was trying to alleviate Jan Van Eyck of the blame of not loving his son by saying, well, I'm defective. So, like, of course, he had so much riding on me and he tried everything. He used to love me. And now, obviously, because I'm broken, of course he doesn't love me. And it, like, broke my heart to read that because that's, like... not to project my own trauma onto, like, a fictional character, but they just, like, rung home for me in certain aspects, and there were a lot of really great interactions with... this is a Kaz Brecker stan account, a lot of great interactions with Kaz and Inej. That kind of broke my heart a little bit, because Kaz doesn't know how to make a friend. If one was presented to him on a silver platter saying, Kaz, be my friend, he's terrible he's every time. So those things stood out to me. And then, even though I did just say this is a Kaz Brecker stan account, I will say it's a lot easier for me to take him seriously on screen when I'm not in his inner monologue, which is some Joker shit. And intentionally so. But, you know, he is very much like an edgelord teen Molgoth. So sometimes I'm like, baby, you gotta simmer. Just a titch for me. You gotta simmer like a bit. So those were my kind of, I guess, re-impressions after reading the book. How was your first impression of it?
I really liked it. So you in our when we talked about Six of Crows said that Crooked Kingdom would, like, kind of address some of the problems that we had with the way that the kids are characterized, and specifically address the fact that they are children. And I think that Crooked Kingdom largely does, you know, try to take steps to be like, hey, these are very young people with a lot of shit that's happened to them. And I mean, like, they're still, like, you know, basically superheroes and extremely powerful. We'll get to the Kaz last stand in a bit, but like, there's this part, because so Jesper's whole thing is that, like, he gambled away his dad's farm because he has a gambling addiction as a 16-year-old, which is very funny. But Jesper's dad comes back. His dad's name is Colm, and there's this part right after, like, they've had this terrible, they're one of their heists goes wrong, and they're all beaten and they're all barely alive, and they're all getting back together in this hotel. And there's this passage that I'm going to read. It was Colm's solid presence that transformed the image in the mirror. He made the people in the reflection seem less dangerous, as if they weren't the team that had broken into the ice court and bested the Theoden military with little more than their wits and nerve. Only a bunch of children worn out after a particularly brutal birthday party. Which is really funny, but also, like, does very much get at the fact that, like, they're kids, and, like, Colm literally has to break up Jesper and Kaz fighting by saying, like, calling Jesper by his middle name, and everybody's just like, oh shit, he called you by your middle name, now you're in trouble. And
which,
like,
even stops Kaz, which is funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kaz is like, all right.
Kaz Dirty Hands Brecker was, like, unstoppable, and then all of a sudden your friend's dad whips out his middle name, and you're like, oh, no, never. Sorry.
Nope, I'll kill 10 men with a couple of rusty screws, but if my friend's dad gets the middle name out, I'm out. But yeah, like, there's parts like you said, digging into the fact that, like, Wyland's whole backstory and, like, why he's estranged, and, like, also the fact that his mom isn't actually dead, but, like, you know, committed into a sanitarium against her will, or, like, you know, there are flashbacks to Inej's parents, and, like, the fact that she misses them a lot, and she doesn't even know if they're still alive or if they're still looking for her. And, like, you know, there's a part where, like, I think she's talking to either Nina or Matthias, but like she's like, I would just, I would give anything to have the choice to, let my parents know that I'm still around and like make that choice, because like her whole thing is like, she was taken and forced to work in a brothel. So like, again, it is a lot, we'll talk about the ways that these books treat their characters, and like, sometimes you do have to make the stakes very high, and that's okay as long as it's, being done evenly. I don't think that we necessarily shouldn't put young people into dangerous situations. It is a YA book, but it is a little bit much. But yeah, I do think that like the way that it explores their backstories and the reasons for them being the way they are largely do pay off and are good.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, with regards to the character ages thing, I struggle with that a lot, right? Because, like, yeah, I think that young characters could and should be subjected to these situations, because that's what, like, kids that age are interested in reading, right? They're interested in reading about themselves. They think they can handle these adult situations, so, like, of course, they're going to want to read about that. Like, it's important for these books to appeal to their audience, for the characters to be relatable to the you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do function on anime rules with these books, which is you add +5 to any age. Like Sailor Moon's 19. Like, I just have to do that for myself, to be able to enjoy something. I'm not going to talk about Shadow and Bone a lot, because that's a completely different conversation. They made a lot of changes to that narrative, from what I understand. But they do make a couple of jokes about the ages, because they're all aged up non-specifically. Like, no one's a teen in there. They're not even trying to play teens. But there is one point where they have to fake paperwork, and Jesper looks at his, and he looks at Kaz, and he's like, no one's going to believe I'm that old. And Kaz is like, really? Well, too bad. And Jesper, when he hands over the paperwork to the official that they're trying to like dupe, he just like pops his collar and like winks at him and is like, I know I look pretty good for my age. And the official's like, really? Thought you looked older. And it's the paperwork, and I'm like, we're acknowledging it. Great. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, it's a subjective debate. So like, we're not going to come out of here with like an answer. It's just, how are we feeling about it? And I think we're feeling, it's fine. It be what it be. We watched Baby Goku go through a lot too.
Yeah, I guess it's different, anime versus reading it in a book, but I do feel, especially in our first episode, we came dangerously close to being like, oh, you shouldn't show teenagers in sex scenes, because that's like, that's pornography, and that's no good.
Okay, so listen, we already talked about this. We were in a really bad mood when we recorded that, but I also listen, I have a story, and that story is as such. When I don't give up on things, I'm stubborn. If you make me read or watch something, I will probably finish reading or watching it even if I don't like it, because I'm stubborn. And when I was a teen, I'm not going to name the books because I'm sure they're fine and I'm sure people get enjoyment out of them, but I did read some books. They were vampire novels in the Twilight, like hype, and there was a blowjob scene, and it was pretty explicit, and that's fine. I was a teen, they were teens, it's all good. The thing that made me give up on this series, and I think has traumatized me a little bit, to like younger characters being in these situations, was that, and God, this is gonna give away what the series was, but again, I'm sure it's fine. It just wasn't comfortable for me. The series is written by a mother-daughter pair. And so ever since that, I've been a little, wary So I'm sorry, that's my personal problem that I have to get over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a little bit more extreme than what this book is going for, but I think that just
sure. I'm not drawing a comparison here. I'm just saying that I carry that uncomfortable experience with me in my day-to-day life, and it does affect some judgments I make sometimes.
Yeah. I'm just saying generally, like, we're adults and we're a little bit more protective of young people because, we're a little bit older now. I mean, we're both like 10 years older than most of these protagonists, so like it is weird for us to be like, oh wow, that's a terrible situation, and I wouldn't want to see a kid in that. But also, like, especially for a YA audience, I do feel like we have to have some grace around characters being put in dangerous situations. Like the scene with Inez about to have her legs shattered really, really fucked me up. And I was just like, oh, I hate reading this. It's very tense, and I don't like seeing Inez put in this situation. But also, like, I think it very much does make sense in context, and like I don't think it was exploitative. And I think it does pay off because it sets up the fact that Inez is like, oh yeah, Kaz won't trade me back if you break my legs, and like that sets up her conflict, which is like, oh, Kaz only cares about me as far as like I am useful to him. So like I think that worked out.
Yeah, and I think there's a demonstrative evolution of both of our takes on this topic, because there is a note in our outline that one of our favorite parts in this book is that all of the characters are hilariously horny.
It's really funny, actually. I don't know what it is. I don't know why we were upset about that before. But it is all very consensual horniness, which I think is very fun. Like Matthias and Nina are really funny because, like, Nina has to dress up in all these various costumes, and Matthias like, oh my god, she's wearing something that makes her boobs stick out, and like I can't handle that. And then Kaz is like, hey Matthias, can you quit gawking and pay attention to the lesson plan? And Nina's like, hey, be quiet, I like it when he gawks. And then there's another part where she's like, oh, why haven't you kissed me yet? And then he's like, well, it's not proper, and we would have to like talk to your parents and then have 3 chaperoned dates, and then I would have to be under the stars. And then she's like, oh, shut the fuck up. And they make out, and then she's like, oh wow, hey Matthias. And then she's like, hey, wait, Matthias. And then when he's like, oh, yeah, what's going on? He looks, and like the dignitaries they're there to meet are just like, okay, that's a lot. Can you stop making out so you can, prevent a war?
Yeah, and then there's also Kaz's hilarious repressed horniness, which is... I love the boy. I think he's great, but there's just moments where he's zoning out and he's just like, what if I pulled on Inez's hair? And I'm like, he will have these thoughts, and then he's too afraid to tell her that he likes her. He literally razes a city to the ground, basically, and has all these conversations, and like, he didn't give a shit about Jan Van Eyck either way until she was like, he almost broke my leg or shattered my leg. And then he was like, I'll dismantle him. And I'm like, so you'll do that, and you're having all of these little thoughts in your head, and you won't tell the girl you like her.
Men will literally buy a warship for a girl before they tell her how they feel about her.
He bought her a warship. He found her parents. There's one of my favorite scenes in all of literature is they have this like bathroom scene where he has to change her bandages, and he has this whole thing about touching other people. He hates doing it because he has like these horrible memories, these traumatic memories of touching his brother's like bloated corpse, so he just like can't do it. And it's again the tension, chef's kiss. Very tense scene where he like is changing her bandages, and she's talking to keep him grounded because he's like almost slipping into like a flashback, and he kisses her neck, but it's like 4 pages. It's like it's like a peck. It's barely anything, and it's like 4 pages of buildup, and then he's just like, and at that moment, all of the thoughts I've ever had about her flash through my mind, and then we're gone again. I'm like, baby, just tell her you like her. Like, I'm withering here. You're so repressed. And we haven't even gotten into Jesper Bad Decisions Fahey, who does nothing but flirt through both books and the TV show.
Jesper's great. I love that he ends up with Wylan, and I love the fact that like they're like pretty much like it's pretty guaranteed that they're going to get together by the end. But like it's very much like that, like very silly obstacles get in the way, like the fact that like at one point Wyland's face looks like Kuei's, and Kuei's like, I want to make out with Jesper, so like he pretends to be Wyland, and then Jesper makes out with him, and then Wyland walks in, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I was interrupting something, and then Jesper's like, hey, wait, wait, hold on, and then Kuei's like, sorry, and Wyland's like, all right, you little shit, I'm gonna enjoy shooting you later.
Kuei, non-lethally,
of course.
Yeah, Kuei's a little asshole, but I love Wyland, because so when he gets his face changed back, Jesper, ADHD king, like, cannot sit still, so he's just, like, doing anything. He's like, okay, I'm gonna stick my hand in this clay. Nope, bad idea. He's just running around doing whatever the fuck he can to keep himself occupied. He comes back and he looks at Wyland and he's like, did you tell her to make you hotter? And Wyland's like, no.
No, I was always this hot. I slips the Grisha a 20.
And then eventually he's like, yeah, a little. And that's king shit.
It's really good. There are a lot of really great moments in this. I think the heists are interesting. I mean, the rescuing Inej one, where basically like they do the prisoner exchange, but then also he has like 100 different masked people just like run around and throw coins everywhere, and everyone's like, yeah, this rules.
Start a block party to save your girlfriend.
Yeah, no.
The list of things Kazbrecker does to save his girlfriend grows, and yet he cannot tell her that he likes her. It is madness. It is amazing. No, that like party scene with the masks, I knew pretty early on, I think, in my life. You know how, like, if you're a kid, even like, no one tells you what you can and can't do really, like, with your life. So you I don't know, kind of figure out your career path pretty early on, and then you either stray from it or you know, maybe come back to it. You know, maybe you find something adjacent. But for me, like, I knew pretty early on when I was a kid that I wanted to do something in the arts, because I was always really good at, like, picturing things that were happening in books, like, really cinematically. Like, there's a shot progression generally when I read through things, and sometimes I'll have to, like, reread them, because I'm like, no, wait, that over the shoulder shouldn't go there. So if this is happening later, we should swap that and, you know, cross the 180 or whatever. I've always been a dweeb. Aaron is laughing at me. So, that scene is so cinematic to me. Like, I hope that the later seasons of Shadow and Bone, like, get into this plot line with Jan van Eyck and Pekka Rollins, because I would love to see this shit on screen. The colors, the gold coins, everyone's laughing and dancing, and then there's, like, it's just so cool to me. That, and then there's another, I think at the end of Six of Crows, when Inej is, when she's, like, climbing that incinerator vent, I think. There's just, I don't know, the stuff like that really, really thrills me. I think that sometimes there's just, like, a really great rhythm to these scenes, and that, in this book, it's that scene, the rescue of Inej, and the bathroom scene, and Kaz taking a fucking beating at the slat. Those are, like, my 3 favorite scenes they're just so cinematic and so cool, and I love them and want to draw them when I have the time.
I think using cinematic as a framing is very useful, because, like, there's a part where, like, all the gangs are deputized by the cops, and they're, like, you know, they're all given the go-ahead to hunt down the gang, the Six, and, like, it reminded me so much of, like, the scene in, I think, John Wick 2, where, like, all the bad guys get, like, a text message. All the assassins are like, hey, John Wick, you know, if you kill John Wick, you get, like $10 million or whatever. And, like, everybody just, like, looks at their phone and then, like, looks up at John Wick. And, like, I think that would be so cool. I love the way that she described, like, all the gangs, like, uniting and, like hunting them down, including, like, their own gang, the Crow gang. And then it was just like, oh, shit. It's really good. Another really good scene that I thought was when Inej is, like, going on these sugar silos to, like, she has, like, this chemical that's going to destroy all of Van Eyck's sugar, and, like, use that to frame him in like a conspiracy, basically. And then, like, she gets through the 3rd silo, and then, like, fucking this lady called Dunyasha shows up, and she's like an Uber ninja, And I was just like, yeah, I love when a battle angel shows up and starts to kick my ass on a high wire. Like, I thought that scene was so fun. And like, Dunyasha, you know, RIP, I love a battle angel. I love somebody who rolls up and thinks they're the protagonist and then immediately gets their ass whooped. It's so good. I love, you know, I'm sorry Dunyasha's gone because I think she would have made a great recurring villain. Just like, I have the blood of kings in my veins. And, you know, just like, all right, well, I'm going to splatter the blood of kings all over the floor.
Yeah, Dunyasha's fun because Inej was about to get her ass whooped by her the second time. Mm-hmm. And then, like, sometimes these books are just so funny because she's sitting there and, you know, as she's kind of getting her ass handed to her, Inej just goes, wait a minute. I have the home field advantage. I know where I am. And I know that if I move 3 inches to the fucking left, splat, splat, blood of kings. And that's all she does. And she's like, well, all right. Scoots to the right. And, like, Dunyasha falls and dies. So,
it's really funny.
Only the strongest survive, baby.
Oh, it's so good. There are just so many great scenes in this. I'm torn about talking about the end. Let's talk about how Kaz gets out of this, because that's such a good scene that really made me like turn on his character. I was like, he is edgy, but like he does, like, you know, he is like a superhuman, and like he earns his whole, you know, edgelord like reputation in this scene where, okay, so we just described all the gangs are like united against them and trying to hunt them down, including their own gang that they're sponsored by. And what Kaz does is he rolls up to that gang's headquarters. He's like, no, I'm actually taking over because you're the guy who currently runs it. All his success is owed to me. And if you think you're wrong, you can fucking fight me. I'm 17 years old and I use a cane and I will beat you all to death with it. And he proceeds to do that, which is great.
Yeah, my favorite threats against Kaz are always anybody else saying they'll beat him to death with his own cane, and it happens all the time, and it feels like every time that villain thinks they're the first one to think of it. And it's, you know, Kaz is just like, fucking try me, I guess. My favorite part of that scene, again, very cinematic, love that shit. My favorite part of that scene is that he tells Inej not to follow him in, like, the grim, darkiest, like, edgelord way possible. Where he's just like, if you ever cared about me at all, don't follow me. And she follows him anyway, because he's like, you're such a little bitch. I know your every move. And she follows him, and he knows she followed him. So I'm like, what? What is the point of you? Because they make... So useless. They make eye contact, and he, like, shakes his head at her to tell her, like, hey, don't come help me. While he's getting his ass whooped, and then he gets back and, like, makes this cool supervillain speech, and I'm like, this is fucking funny, because Inej, the whole scene is from Inej's point of view, and she's kind of commentating the whole thing, and Kaz gets up and he's like, listen, you're not going to get a pat on the back from me. I'm not going to call you son. And Inej in her head goes, yeah, he is really, really bad at making friends. like really bad at it.
He's not lying. You're not going to feel good about working for him, but he is very effective.
Which, one of my favorite parts of this book is that every single person of this band of 6 has developed an inner Kaz. And it is a version of Kaz that they have in their heads that bullies them. He's not actually that mean. He's mean. He's rude. I would say he's rude. But he's not that, like Wyland's whole thing was like, he took his flute to see his mother's grave when he found out that his mom wasn't dead. And but one of my favorite lines in the whole book is like, oh, I was gonna play my flute at her grave like an idiot. And he's like, he pictures like Kaz like hearing about that, and he's like, oh, he would laugh in my face, and I'm like, he wouldn't, mostly because he doesn't laugh ever once.
It's not really his style.
It's not his thing. But he's developed this like inner Kaz bully to like cool him down in these situations, and so has Jesper and Inej also. And it's so funny. It's a funny thing to do, to make up a version of your friend in your head to bully you out of hard things.
because we've all done that, right? We've all had like that made up fight in the shower where we get a good comeback, except for everyone else, it's like, oh, this is what Kaz Brecker would say to me in this situation. And you know what? He's right. God damn it.
Except for my beautiful gay disaster Jesper, who every time Inej does something, everyone's looking at Inej and he's just looking at Kaz. He's like, I know your fucking secret, bitch boy. Like, you gotta tell her someday. And he just watches him be like weird and tense and emo. It's very good. It makes, oh god, great, amazing. 10 out of 10.
One thing I really did appreciate is that like everybody did get not only their spotlight time and like interactions where we do get to see relationships between them, but like I do feel like everyone except for Nina got a very satisfying character arc. I mean, like Kaz, I mean, they win. Kaz gets revenge on his like Pekka Rollins, who is his arch nemesis for forever, by pretending to bury his son alive and making him believe that, which is really funny. You know, Inez gets a warship to go hunt down you know, slavers. Matthias, okay.
Oh, here we go.
I can't believe this is me fucking putting on my armor and getting ready to become the fucking Matthias Defense Force, but
okay, sell me on Matthias. Do it.
Matthias largely sucks, right? His whole thing is like, I'm very stupid and I love Nina, and I also, you know, am still iffy about the fact that she can use magic. But I think the book very much does explain the fact that like he is grappling with that. And he's like, no, I've been indoctrinated, and like that it comes all the way around in the end when he is killed by a fellow Driscoll, which is like, you know, his cool Wolf SS former unit that he was in. And like but his whole arc is like, Nina's great, and like I'm friends with all these great people, and even Jesper's a Grisha, and he saved my ass a dozen times. And like I think I was just lied to for the purposes of you know, building an empire. And like he is also like painfully just like, oh, the thing when he loves his favorite outfit that Nina wears is when she's wearing like a traditional Fjorden outfit, which is like a fucking, you know, Mormon ass skirt and like a sweater vest. And he's like, you look so cute and wholesome, and it's just ridiculous. And she's like, I fucking hate this outfit, but I'll wear it if you like it, you idiot. And like I do think Matthias like comes around and is like, you know, I do actually like all these people, and like I need to work on my own thing. And like he does do a thing which makes sense narratively, but I think also is just like, Nina, you got to get better boyfriends, which is that when he dies, he makes Nina promise that she will help de-radicalize the Driscoll, which is like, I don't know that that's Nina's job, bro. I mean, their whole thing is that they want to kill people like her. So I don't know about that, Chief. But like, I did think that Matthias's character arc was pretty good.
I think I would have liked Matthias better if he was starting to understand that something was wrong on his own before he met Nina, you know? Because he's mean, and he doesn't want to hang out with the group, and he's... I just don't, it's not Nina's, like you said, it's not her job to fix him. And then she tries so hard, and in the end, it doesn't even matter. Like, oof, he's just so, I don't even know how to like express my frustration with Matthias as a character. I think I'm just tired of the, like, in life, in general, I think I'm just tired of the whole, like, it's the oppressed's job to make the oppressor like them thing. Mm-hmm. I think I'm just tired of that. Just made feel like it's my responsibility to get people to like me, and people like me for whatever, you know, pick a marginalization. Like, what do you want to, you know, what do you want me to represent today? So I think that sets me against him initially. And then he's just like, I just want him to get places earlier, you know? If he maybe, like, came into the scene with a little more doubt in his heart about his indoctrination, you know? Maybe he was witness to something. Maybe something happened. Maybe, you know, and that's why he was so, like, susceptible to Nina. Maybe if he was just, like, a little nicer to the just, like, non-Grisha members of the team, like 2 chapters earlier. I think I would like him better. But he's obstinate, and Nina is too hot and too funny and too good. She deserves an apex boyfriend. And I just don't think, I think Matthias is like, at best, B tier, you know?
Listen, I don't disagree with a lot of that. I mean, I think that Nina definitely deserves better. But, like, you know, again, this book came out in 2016. Like, I mean, when I say we, I mean white American culture had not really grappled with problems of radicalization yet, because this was, you know, pre-Charlottesville, and people were like, you know, Donald Trump's not going to win the presidency. And I think that Leigh Bardugo probably would, you know, not make that character choice now. But regardless, I do think it is, you know, it's not a perfect character choice, and I think that your criticisms are valid, but I do kind of like the fact that, you know, that it is somebody who is like wholly radicalized against a marginalization, whose final act is like, hey, help other people like me. I do wish it hadn't been Nina to save him from that radicalization. I do wish that it hadn't been him asking Nina to help other people, because that puts a lot of pressure on her. But I think it's a pretty good character arc overall. But I understand your criticisms, and they're fair. I
will give Matthias one. I will concede 1 point, and I will concede that there is a line where he catches himself thinking some dumb shit, and then has to like stop and be like, no, it's not the person using the thing, it's the thing that I'm scared of. And then he has to take another second and go, wow, this whole process is going to be a lifelong journey, just like Nina getting over the parem. And I was like, see, had you gotten here 5 chapters earlier, I would maybe like you better. But he takes too long to get places. And I think the other thing is, it's like not helping him in this context for me, is that everyone else is kind of a party animal and he's always a party pooper, and I just want him to join in on the party. Like, it's just, me and Nina are just trying to like psychically enable him to have like a touch of fun, and he won't, and so he's just always this downer voice in like really fun scenes, and I'm like, please, Matthias, just be fun for like 10 seconds for me, please. And he hasn't.
Here's the thing, is that I used to be somebody who, you know, didn't drink. I didn't drink until I turned 21, so like I used to be that kind of, not necessarily, I did not want other people to have fun, but I do get being the only person who's like, oh, everyone else is having fun except for me, and I feel like I can't because of the way that I am. So, you know, I do get that, but that's fair.
Listen, I respect your thoughtful, wonderful defense of Matthias. I think your defense of him is thought out way more deeply than my like guttural dislike of him, which again mostly stems from the fact that Nina deserves better.
Listen, no one's arguing that Nina should not be in this book. She should be in fucking God, what's the Daevabad trilogy?
Oh yeah. Nina should be raking in hotties left and right. I love her so fucking much. She's so funny. I love her friendship with Inej more than, I don't know, everything I own. It's just there when Inej gets back to the tomb and they're all just, you know, sitting there like trying to plan their way out of this like hot mess they've gotten themselves in. And Nina's like, baby, come here, you look thin. I got cookies. And she puts her arm around her. I'm like, this is... And, you know, Nina's, like, trying to stand up to Kaz, and she's like, no, I'm not doing this unless you help all the other Grisha. And Kaz is like, no. And then Inej is like, then I'm not doing it till you help the other Grisha. And Kaz has to be like, fine.
Yeah, no, their friendship is great throughout this entire book, and I do love the little moments of them just, like, hanging out and being cute together. They rule.
They do rule, and you know, it's just I think my dislike of him 60% stems from that, and then 40% everything else I said. Listen, you're not wrong.
One thing I did want to get your thoughts on so this happens a lot in heist media in general, which is that like the narrators lie to you, like and, you know, unreliable narrators are a thing, but in this instance, it's like it's very much like, so they're like at the end of one chapter, and it's just like, okay, and now Kue has to die, and it's like, but like not really, but like she does that. That's not explained until like the next chapter, or like Wylan, you know, Wylan is fake captured, and then like at the end of the chapter, it's like in the end he gave up their plan, but like that was also part of the plan. Or like the Council of Tides, you know, being a bunch of Grisha. Like at that point, I was like, oh, that's not the real Council of Tides. Like this is a scam too, because everything is a scam within a scam, and like I'm wondering how you feel about that, because like in some instances, right, like that is important and it builds tension. It's like, oh, it's going to keep you in suspense. But in other instances, like when I listen to Friends at the Table, Austin Walker is very keen on like having the audience be in on the joke and like know, you know, what's going on. And I'm wondering how you think that works narratively, and like whether you think it's better, or in what situations it's good to just be like, no, I'm going to let the audience in on the joke. So that way they know what's happening. And like, do you think it's better to build tension that way, or just to be like, I'm going to give them misinformation and see how that adds to the narrative?
I think it depends on the context. I think it works fine here because this is a YA novel, right? And it's full of what I like to call surprised Pikachu moments, because it's exactly like the face that moment wants you to make, like Wylan has to die, you know? And it's I think it achieves its desired effect, because even knowing the plot of the book, sometimes, like when Wylan gave up the plan, I was like, wait, what? I don't remember this shit. So I think it's fun. And because the unreliable narrator I'm like most familiar with, to no one's surprise, is Varric from Dragon Age 2, because Dragon Age 2 is framed from Varric's point of view as he like tells the story. And the popular, I guess, interpretation within the fandom is that he's an unreliable narrator, mostly for the part where the game was like really rushed, and so everyone's like, yeah, the dungeons are just all the same because Varric's bad at describing shit, which I'm fully bought into. I think that's hilarious. It didn't really bother me that the dungeons were all the same. So in that context, I don't know. I think with stuff like that, it just never gets played up enough for it to like have an effect on me. Like, I usually just take it, and then once the actual truth is revealed, it just, you know, it's surprise Pikachu all over again. It's like, I'm really bad at, like, guessing twists and stuff. I don't know. I think it's fun. I think it's fine. It's entertaining. If it works, it works. I have no real, like... Do you have any, like, because, I mean, you brought it up. Do you have any, like, specific feelings about it in this context? Or is there, like... I don't know, have you ever been caught, like, truly off guard? Have you ever seen it used, like, memorably well? Or memorably poorly, I guess?
I mean, I don't have any specific instances where it, like, was like, oh, that's, you know, I wish they had just, like, you know, told us the truth. Like, I think in heist movies, like, it is important to, like, not give all the details, or, like, in some instances just be like, okay, yeah, and then this thing is gonna happen. And in this book, like... You know, I think they maybe could have done it better, right? Like, I think it could have been like, you know, instead of saying like, you know, Kue has to die, it could have been like, you know, Inesh had to make sure that, you know, Jesper had Kue in his sights or something, like something that didn't frame it like deliberately as misinformation, because like, you know, like Wylan, like when they say that Wylan gives them up, like I think that's fine because like technically he does, but also that's part of the plan. Like I think there's a fine line to be like, I feel like you shouldn't, unless it's established that your narrator is unreliable or like that's the point. I feel like you should try to stray like, you know, into the realm of giving little or scant details to create an impression, but not straight up saying like, oh, and then this thing's gonna happen, but actually it's, you know, part of the whole plan. But I do think it is important, especially, you know, it's a YA book, so it shouldn't get too, you know, caught up in the mechanics of it, but like it does create tension in like heist things when you don't have all the information. But I do also think that like when I cite Friends at the Table, right, there's an interesting tension at being like, okay, everyone knows what's going to happen, but the characters don't. And like because of the tabletop nature, the collaborative nature of Friends at the Table, and that's really the way I'm framing this is in terms of like when you're running a tabletop game. I think it's interesting to frame the tension between like, okay, we as the, characters or the players and narrators of the story know what's going on here, but our characters don't. And how can we play with that tension to be like, okay, I think this is actually what happens, because that makes it more interesting later on for the character when that information is revealed to them. So I think it like with all things, it depends, which is kind of a cop-out answer. But, I just thought it was something worth bringing up that, like, I think it largely works well in this story, but I think we should be careful to not mislead our audience and then be like, surprise, it was this thing, because then we get into the Shyamalan twist, and we don't love that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I don't read a lot of heist books. I honestly don't really watch a lot of heist movies. My favorite being Ocean's 8, because Sandra Bullock giving that fucking mirror speech is everything to me. It's so good. Do it for that little girl who wants to be a criminal. It's just so, like, good. So to me, I don't really like. I'm not super familiar with like the typical narrative structure of a heist, or how you could invert that, or how you can like play up on it, especially in literature. I think the thing that I'll say took some of the tension out of the novel for me was something adjacent to what you're trying to get at, which is sometimes Kaz will go do things and then do like a lore dump, like he would go and then he's like, well, I already did X, Y, and Z, and then the rest of the team has to like catch up with the reader. I think I would have liked to see him doing those things in kind of like non sequitur, than not knowing the context. I feel like there would have been more tension for me to like have Kaz be operating on his own, and I think it would be a better compliment to the fact that no one trusts him, because with him doing stuff off the page, and then coming back and giving a lore dump, and then only doing trustworthy things, all that dramatic tension with characters not trusting him isn't as impactful as I think as it could be if he wasn't just like sometimes randomly caught doing shit that didn't make sense, which I think is adjacent to the point we're talking about with like misleading the audience almost on purpose to create tension. I think that a little bit more of the misleading could have been happening within the context of the narrative, with characters doing stuff instead of, like you said, pointing the opposite and pointing the audience in the opposite direction. Again, though, that being said, it didn't super bother me, because again, it's a YA, very like melodramatic novel. There's a lot of melodrama, so I think within the context of the story, it like makes sense to me that, and Ezra's like, and then he has to die, and then in the next chapter, Jesper's like, oh god, I gotta shoot this kid but not kill him, like, I'm stressed. So yeah, I think it depends on like what kind of payoff you want, and I think going back to the way we opened this podcast, which was kind of like apologizing for our criticisms from the last book, I think in the year since, especially like following more authors on Twitter and like getting a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, at the process, I think R.F. Kuang talks about this all the time, but there's a lot of authors who like grow up on the page, and as creators ourselves who kind of like have our own narratives we're working on, sometimes a project is a space to play with something, and it feels like this was something Leigh Bardugo was playing with as a dramatic tool. Whether or not it worked obviously is subjective, but you try it, I guess that's the lesson here, is she tried it. It worked more for me than for you, it seems like, but that's fine, and because it fits within the context of this like incredibly melodramatic novel. Would it have fit in the context of something like the fucking Poppy War? Probably not. No, I think we'd be like, oh. But within the context of a bunch of Molgoths trying to stop a war, I think it was fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I don't want to give the impression that I didn't like it. I just thought it was interesting to note the ways in which that she builds tension. But yeah, honestly, it's a really good book. You should, if you're interested at all in, YA or heists or, just fun characters, definitely check out Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Leyla, do you have anything else that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, no, I think this is a pretty solid review of a very fun, very delightful book full of fun hijinks and cool teens. And I'm thrilled for having read it, especially because I did, again, just watch Shadow and Bone, and it does have like an older take on these characters, and it inserts them. I don't think they're in the Shadow and Bone novels. I'm not sure. Like,
I don't think so.
But they get inserted into the Shadow and Bone story, and again, they're like aged up, and it's a much more serious take on this series. And it's delightful fun, but it was fun to like come back and see the origins, and especially in a in a better mood.
Yeah, definitely.
And more receptive to the hijinks and such. Yeah. So, Aaron, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on the internet at AaronSXL, where I tweet about the fact that Indiana's healthcare policy is still a disaster. You can also listen to the other podcast I do at The Bible Boys. We just released an episode about Yes, God, Yes, the Natalia Dyer movie. Masturbation comedy is what it was called. And next week we'll be watching Silence, which is a movie about missionaries to Japan, I think, which will be very interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. Leyla, where can people find you on the internet?
I'm at LEYLSES on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. You can follow me for me returning to work on my webcomic, which is about overcoming loneliness and family trauma. And it's a fantasy romance, so come talk to me about it. It's a good time. Yeah, that's... I forgot how I end my plug. That's me.
Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. Find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com.
Aaron, what do we say when we convene our group of teams to do our hijinks?
No mourners,
no funerals.
Oh, I'm going to miss these kids.